5 biblical mothers whose choices still impact moms today. As moms, we learn and take cues from mothers who have gone before us. As Christians, we especially pay attention to the mothering role models found in the Bible. After all, these moms' lives are chronicled in God's Word, the Holy Scriptures, revealing their choices, one still impacting moms today who study and learn from them. As a mom myself, I feel for these women, too, because biblical descriptions often describe the good, the bad, and the ugly of their lives, recorded for all of humanity to read. Most of us would shudder to consider some of our hidden, inward thoughts, along with some of our outward actions, being written down for everyone to critique. But let's take a few moments to look at 5 biblical mothers whose choices still impact moms today. 1. Eve paves the way for fallen moms as the only sinless woman to ever walk on the face of the earth. Eve is a woman to be recognized. When most of us think of her, at first, we may feel disappointed that she would fall for Satan's lies and take the whole human race down with her. With such a devastating failure, many of us would feel like we wouldn't ever be able to move past it. Some of us would beat ourselves up for the rest of our lives and, like Eve, likely try to hide away in shame for what we did. But as the first mother ever, Eve had no earthly mother to teach her the ropes and no human role model to follow after. Instead, she had to look to God to show her how to become a mom and take care of her children. She had no birthing or parenting books, classes, or videos to help her. As our pioneer mother, Genesis 3 verse 20 explains, Adam named his wife Eve, because she would become the mother of all the living. Some women believe they don't deserve to become moms because of past choices they've made, feeling forever disqualified and not good enough for motherhood. But Eve is our example of God's grace and mercy towards fallen women, paving the way as the first mother. She truly is an inspiration, encouraging women to see how they, too, can move forward, even after the gravest of sins, to become mothers. 2. Naomi shows mother-in-laws how to love. As a wife and mother of 2 sons, Naomi experienced the loss of all the men in her life. Even so, she was more concerned for both daughter-in-laws' futures and well-being than her own, urging them to go back to their homelands so they could remarry. She held their best interests above her own, even though their leaving would mean she was left with no support. For a woman in her time and culture, it looked like she was destined for destitution. Yet, she loved her deceased sons so much that she continued loving and looking out for their widowed wives, even as a widow herself. When Ruth refused to leave her, Naomi offered her wisdom and direction in finding a new husband, lovingly mentoring her in how to approach and be visible to a godly man. In response to Naomi's gentle coaching, Ruth said, "I will do everything you say." So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law had instructed her to do. Ruth 3 verses 5 to 6. Ruth 4 verse 13 describes how Naomi's counsel reaped good results for both of them. So Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. As a gracious, loving mother-in-law, despite her immense sorrow and loss, Naomi modeled for all mother-in-laws how to love, care for, and look out for their daughter-in-laws more than themselves. 3. Hannah turns hopeful moms' hearts to God. Hannah desperately longed to become a mother, so much so that 1 Samuel 1 verse 10 describes how, in her deep anguish, Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. For centuries, her story has been directing women to God as the giver of life. Many women relate to the cries of her heart in wanting a child, and her experience has been turning women's hearts to the Lord in their own heartbreaking situations. Hannah's example encourages women to be persistent and passionate about their desires, even if it means others will misunderstand. As she kept on praying to the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was praying in her heart, and her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. Eli thought she was drunk and said to her, "How long are you going to stay drunk? Put away your wine." 1 Samuel 1 verses 12 to 14. Even though Eli didn't understand, Hannah did not give up or back down. "Not so, my lord," Hannah replied, "I am a woman who is deeply troubled." I have not been drinking wine or beer, I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman, I have been praying here out of my great anguish and grief. 1 Samuel 1 verses 15 to 16. Hannah's quest for motherhood continues to inspire women today to seek God, who understood, heard her cries, and saw her tears, giving her a response through Eli, who answered, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him." 1 Samuel 1 verse 17. 4. Elizabeth teaches moms to be friends in the Bible. When Mary needed a place of peace and refuge, she turned to Elizabeth, who was lovingly there for her, cheering her on. Luke 1 verse 56 explains, Mary stayed with Elizabeth for about 3 months and then returned home. As a godly, precious friend and relative, Elizabeth is like the film and sitcom friend who is devotedly supportive of the lead character and always there when needed. In Luke 1 verses 44 to 45, we read Elizabeth's encouraging words to Mary, "As soon as the sound of your greeting reached my ears, the baby in my womb leaped for joy. Blessed is she who has believed that the Lord would fulfill his promises to her." Elizabeth has been teaching mothers throughout history to rejoice, celebrate, and encourage our mom friends in the blessings God gives them and to be free from having a competitive attitude towards them. 5. Mary helps moms receive the disruption of motherhood in today's culture. Many women believe motherhood's timing and situation are theirs and theirs alone to make. If a pregnancy is unexpected, unwelcome, or doesn't fit into the plans they have for their life, sadly, many choose to reject carrying a new life. But in looking at Mary's example, moms discover that the timing and situation in which a child is born are really God's decisions. Acts 17 verse 25 explains how God himself gives everyone life and breath. He is a hands-on God, like Psalm 139 verse 19 explains, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb." Mary was caught off guard when she heard of her coming pregnancy. Luke 1 verse 34 describes her surprise at God's plan, and she asks serious questions. "How will this be?" Mary asked the angel, "since I am a virgin?" Jesus wasn't in Mary's plan before he was conceived, but his birth was in God's plan before the foundations of the world were established. 1 Peter 1 verse 20 explains, "He was chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake." Mary chose to trust God's plan over her own, even if she didn't understand the timing or the circumstances. Her receptiveness to unexpected motherhood has most likely helped to inspire many women throughout the centuries to be receptive to unplanned pregnancies. Mary graciously submitted to God's timing and will, despite the disruption and impact it would bring to her own life.